seeking the meaning of music with the rhythm of life in 45 minutes. First on BBC One, movie man Barry Norman makes his choice from the pick of the year's film crop.
And after that brief cross-section of cinema 1997, good evening. It's been an interesting year. Its head held high in Britain, its tail between its legs in Hollywood. In Britain, new Labour, whatever else you might think of it, meant new money for a film industry that can never get enough of it, and thus a hopeful new beginning. Meanwhile, in Hollywood, the studios sank so deeply into the primordial murk of mindless spectacle that even their employees cried enough. Well, they whispered it anyway. But to begin with, let's establish the ground rules. I'm going to name what I think are the 10 best films this year, and you are going to disagree with me. Yes, you are. You always do, so don't fight it. Now, I was going to start with Shine, which tells of the strange, sometimes awful, sometimes uplifting life of the Australian concert pianist David Helfgott. But curiously enough, good as it is, it impresses me less the more I think of it. So instead, my first choice is a documentary, Looking for Richard, wherein Al Pacino roams thrillingly, absorbingly around, trying to find the best way to film Shakespeare's Richard III.
But I will not keep her long.
We're never going to finish this movie.
It's organic. It's got to be what it is.
How much more are we going to shoot? It's becoming a movie about a play. We're making a documentary about making Shakespeare a little bit more accessible to people. Those people out there, the people on the street, they're not going to get Richard III. I can't even get Richard III. It's too complicated.
Michael, why is it Shakespeare's most popular play? Why is it performed more than any other play?
I didn't get that last thing you said.
Who said it's the most popular
It
play?
is. It is. It's performed more than Hamlet.
So what?
I run before my horse to market. Clarence still lives and breathes. Edward still reigns. When they are gone, then must I count my gains.
Now, one thing I should have mentioned, my top 10 are listed in chronological order, not in order of merit, because I refuse to play that chalk is good but cheese is better game. On the other hand, I might later on break the rule of a lifetime and tell you which film I've enjoyed most this year. Then again, I might not, depends how I feel. However, early on we had Alan Parker's commendable Evita, plus Ken Loach's fine but flawed Carla's Song, starring Robert Carlyle, from whom there was no escape in 1997. Tom Hanks made a decent directorial debut with That Thing You Do, while Hugh Grant did pretty well in the thriller Extreme Measures, and Mel Gibson was on macho form in Ransom. Against that, alas, John Cleese's Fierce Creatures was a very timid little creature indeed. And so the next film on my list is Patrice Lecomte's Ridicule, a sharp, witty satire of the French court in the days before the Revolution.
Quelle merveilleuse vivacité. À vous, baron.
Conduite, suite, santé, été.
Puis-je voir votre éventail, comtesse? Il vient des Flandres. Quel ouvrage admirable.
Annoncé.
Octosyllabe. Toujours fidèle à sa conduite, l'abbé, sans nuire à sa santé, peut faire 2 mots d'esprit de suite, l'un en hiver, l'autre en été.
Do you realise you haven't agreed with either of my choices so far? And I know that because here's the list of the films you liked best in 1997. At 10, The English Patient, a fine cast in an Oscar-laden epic adapted and directed by Anthony Minghella. 9, Ransom. Mel Gibson gambles with his son's life in an exciting thriller with a twist. At 8, Evita. Madonna sparkles as the eponymous heroine of Alan Parker's richly vibrant adaptation. At 7, Batman and Robin. George Clooney wears the cape but struggles to overcome a ponderous script. 6, Star Wars. 20 years later, the Force is still with Luke Skywalker and company. The money, however, goes to creator George Lucas. 5 is Bean. Rowan Atkinson's eponymous nerd found the Hollywood Hills alive with the sound of tinkling cash registers. At 4, 101 Dalmatians. Glenn Close proved memorably grotesque in Disney's live-action version of Dodie Smith's story. 3, The Lost World. Jurassic Park. Great dinosaurs, pity about the plot, and come to that, the soundtrack. 2, Men in Black. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones in easily the best of this year's science fiction movies. It's also the shortest. And number 1, The Full Monty. Let's raise a glass to Robert Carlyle and all the other lads who get their kit off. Bottoms up, fellas. How gratifying to find a British film at the top of the list. Well, as usual, in the course of the year, I found myself buttonholed by all manner of shifty characters. Well, it happens. These are not necessarily people you'd want to be seen with in public, but sometimes you can't even beat them off with a stick. What follows are snippets from some of those brief encounters.
It's funny, Clint Eastwood said to me, my grandfather's Scottish, and I said, my grandfather lives in Eastwood.
Go back to the English patient.
Right.
The Oscar nominations, you must be fairly chuffed about those.
Sorry, I can't take it seriously because they haven't come out yet. Sorry.
As a kid, I used to say, what is acting, really? And I used to sit in front of the TV with my father and watch the old 30s and 40s and 50s movies. And I'd see people dressed up in glamorous, beautiful clothes, saying mouths of dialogue that made sense. Well, today you might say mouths of dialogue, much of it doesn't make sense.
In '64, I left Ireland, came to live in London with my mother and my stepfather. It was in Putney, and the first weekend there, we went to the movies. They took me to the movies, and it was Goldfinger. And so as a boy, having been brought up in Southern Ireland, in Navan, County Meath, there was the Lyric and the Palace Cinema, and it was Old Mother Riley and Norman Wisdom. And that's what I was brought up on. So to see this incredible movie, this Technicolor film, you know, and this and this beautiful blonde lady, half naked on a bed, was captivating.
I've touched your leg, Barry, and I'm never going to be the same again.
Well, I don't think my leg is either. It's
because it's wooden.
Oh, you shouldn't tell everybody that.
As W.B. Yeats said, if Oscar Wilde had fled, had fled,
That's a good word,
fled,
yeah.
we like.
Fled is better, yeah.
As Yeats said, if Wilde had fled, everyone would have understood, but he wouldn't quite have been the Oscar Wilde that one admires.
You're a law-abiding citizen, Danny.
That's right. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I mean it. I got an alibi. I know exactly where I was. I was in an interview with, what's that guy's name there? Barry, what's his name? You know, it's probably on film somewhere. You can pick it up and, you check it out. What time is it, by the way?
What time is it? It's 1:05.
It's 1:05. What's the date? Just want to make sure.
Do you think you'll get married again? Did being married?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's not, I'm 35 now, so it's, I'm fairly set in my ways, and I kind of know what I want, know where my life is going right now, and I don't have any interest at all in being married. I think that marriage is important when you're having children, and I don't have any great drive to have children, so I don't think it's something you do haphazardly.
How about that then? George Clooney will not get married again, and it's official. Yeah, well, anyone want to bet? Around this time, The Crucible with Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder was very good, and so was She's the One, featuring another ubiquitous young person, Cameron Diaz. Michael with John Travolta as the eponymous angel was so-so, as was Tim Burton's Mars Attacks. But Jane Campion's Portrait of a Lady was a sad disappointment. Nicole Kidman wasn't bad, but John Malkovich as an irresistible object of desire, do me a favour. So to my third choice, Kenneth Branagh's brave and rather magnificent 4-hour Hamlet. Fine performances by him, Kate Winslet, and especially Derek Jacobi as Claudius.
Bow, stubborn knees, and heart with strings of steel, be soft as sinews of the newborn babe. All may be well. Now might I do it, Pat. Now he is a-praying, and now I'll do it. And so he goes to heaven, and so am I revenged. That would be scanned. A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, do this same villain send to heaven?
Inevitably, a fair bit of old rubbish was flung our way. Evening Star with Shirley MacLaine was unspeakable, and The Saint with Val Kilmer wearing a series of disguises, each of which made him look even more like Val Kilmer, was even worse. But then things improved. The Star Wars trilogy went on re-release. Baz Luhrmann gave us an ingenious modern version of Romeo and Juliet. Jim Carrey had some funny moments in Liar Liar. Pierce Brosnan starred acceptably enough in the year's first volcano movie, Dante's Peak, and Tom Cruise earned an Oscar nomination in Jerry Maguire. Talking of the Oscars, Jerry Maguire was the only Hollywood studio picture to be nominated in any of the main categories. It won a Supporting Actor Award for Cuba Gooding Jr., but otherwise the big prizes went to the independent sector. What this suggested was that the voters, all of whom work in the industry, were telling Hollywood they were fed up with the ill-conceived, badly written, special effects-ridden megabucks pap that the studios turn out. But will Hollywood listen? Of course not. The significant fact is not that The English Patient carried off 9 Oscars and Columbia's Jerry Maguire only 1, but that even as the awards were handed out, The English Patient had taken a mere $65 million at the American box office, while Jerry Maguire had taken $120 million. When Cuba Gooding said, "Show me the money," the whole of Columbia joined delightedly in the chorus. In effect, we now have 2 film industries, the independent sector, including Britain, which makes the good films, and the Hollywood studios, which make the money. Just to round off the Oscar coverage, the 4th in my films of the year is The English Patient. Well, it seems you either love it or you don't, and I thought the cast and the writer-director Anthony Minghella did a wonderful job.
You still have sand in your hair.
The big fuss of the year, chuntering on from 1996, was over David Cronenberg's Crash, in which people like Holly Hunter and James Spader got their sexual kicks out of violent car crashes. Predictably, our self-appointed moral guardians promptly got their passion killer knickers in a frightful twist. Of course, when the film finally opened, audiences wondered what the fuss was all about, although, I don't know, the plot might have had some effect on Michael Schumacher, but even his Crash with Jacques Villeneuve wasn't that much of a turn-on for anyone. Next year, Adrian Lyne's controversial remake of Lolita opens here, so look out for more moral apoplexy. Meanwhile, here's a summary of the movie news of the year. 1997 was a boom time at the box office. Receipts rose to more than £504 million, which means that nearly 135 million cinema tickets were bought in the last 12 months. Of the 230 or so feature films released so far this year, nearly 80 were British, in other words, made and financed by British companies. During the year, 125 British productions were begun, a sharp contrast with the 55 made 10 years ago, and even more so with the paltry 47 in 1992. The bad news is that the percentage of films still unreleased after 12 months has risen from 4% in 1987 to 42% in 1995. So there's still much to be done to ensure that British productions get a decent distribution deal. The Weinstein brothers Miramax company have taken a gamble that the current mini-boom in UK filmmaking will be sustainable and announced the opening of a British office headed by former Channel 4 films boss David Orkin. Miramax must certainly be well pleased that they backed The English Patient, which cleaned up at the Oscars. Frances McDormand was named Best Actress for Fargo, one of my films of the year last year. Geoffrey Rush won Best Actor for Shine, and Cuba Gooding Jr. got the Best Supporting Actor award for Jerry Maguire. But with Juliette Binoche being named Best Supporting Actress, Anthony Minghella's epic won a grand total of 9 of the coveted gold-lacquered trophies. The 50th Cannes Film Festival was celebrated with a cavalcade of past winners, to whose ranks can now be added that sometime slob Kathy Burke, who deservedly won this year's Best Actress award for her appearance in Gary Oldman's relentlessly gritty directorial debut, Nil by Mouth. Many of us think Ray Winstone should have been named Best Actor as well, but who can understand film juries? Among the waves breaking on the Riviera shore was the phenomenon that is, or do I mean was, the Spice Girls. The Fablon 5 arrived to announce their film debut in the imaginatively named Spice World, the movie, although 1997, A Spice Odyssey, might have been a better title. The Cannes Festival was also the setting for the new Culture Secretary, Chris Smith, to hand out dollops of lottery lolly to 3 lucky consortia, Pathé Productions, DNA Film Limited and the Film Consortium, which we confidently expect and indeed demand will return the favour by providing us with some sensational films. Like every year, 1997 was littered with rumours, some of which actually turned out to be true. Perhaps the most bizarre of them was the suggestion that Clint Eastwood would be the next Batman. Word on the grapevine is that he'll don the cape and codpiece for Tim Burton in a tale of the superhero's last battle against the Scarecrow, to be played by John Travolta. Upstage Superman, here comes Zimmerframe Man. As a postscript to all that, let's not forget the roll call of those who were called to that great preview theatre in the sky during 1997. But now for something much more cheerful. My 5th film is Woody Allen's Everyone Says I Love You, his first musical, and A Little Delight, which features people, including himself, who on the whole can't sing and can't dance, but do so anyway.
Have you seen this place? I was just going home. It's unbelievable. You know, they have the whole thing is like it's an old palazzo, and it's really, really beautiful, but, you know, frantic in there. Hey, you look great.
Oh. I wish you wouldn't say things like that.
Why?
I don't know. I can't take a compliment.
Oh, you're terrific. Well, you know, why not? I'm sorry.
No, it's my problem.
Why, does it makes you feel guilty?
Maybe. I don't know. You seem to have all the answers, don't you?
No, I mean, I think it makes you feel guilty. I think that you must have fantasies of maybe somebody coming along, and you probably have dreams about boats or ships, maybe, or maybe even, you know, like an elevator that you're on an elevator and it goes higher and higher to the top floor, and then it doesn't stop at the top. It just goes right through the roof, and it just sort of flies you over the ocean.
I think I'm gonna faint. I do.
Are you okay?
No, I'm a little overwhelmed, and I'm glad you're leaving tomorrow.
Touch of masculine wish fulfillment there, do you think, on the part of Mr. Allen? So the year wore on. Woody Harrelson was good in The People vs. Larry Flint, as was Colin Firth as the obsessive Arsenal addict in Fever Pitch. There was an admirable French film in A Self-Made Hero, and the memory of John Voight's Lear in Anaconda, quite the most enjoyably lousy film for a long time, kept repeating like a midnight supper of lobster thermidor with a double helping of cheese. The Cannes Film Festival, celebrating its 50th anniversary, was about as exciting as a whoopee cushion, although from a British point of view, Michael Winterbottom's Welcome to Sarajevo was well received, and Gary Oldman's Nil by Mouth made an impressive impact. But now, how went the year in America? Well, here to tell us by satellite from this programme we spend no expense is Tom Brooke. Good evening, Thomas, or rather where you are, good afternoon. What sort of year was it in America?
Well, from the business point of view, Hollywood is actually very happy because they're hoping that in a few days' time they'll have added up all the box office revenues for the year and found that they've broken the barrier of $6 billion. It won't become clear whether or not they break the barrier until a few days from now. So I think in business terms they're feeling pretty good.
But apart from that, Tom, were there any discernible trends?
Well, there are plenty of trends, and you can spend ages looking at all the different trends. I mean, one thing that I noticed is that there were a large number of films based on literary adaptations. Perhaps that speaks to the dearth of new material in Hollywood. But what I try to do in my report which follows is look at some of the hopefully more meaningful trends. And one thing that was very clear is that Hollywood wanted to embrace nostalgia from 25 years ago.
It's not unusual.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Danger Powers personal effects.
Actually, my name is Austin Powers. Danger's my middle name.
The presence of Austin Powers on the big screen, a figure rooted in the 1960s, signalled that for Hollywood this year, retro was in. The 70s were amply revisited, not only with the re-release of the Star Wars trilogy and Ang Lee's The Ice Storm, but with Boogie Nights, which charted the fortunes of a group of California porn actors in the late 1970s. It was no accident that the 70s figured so prominently in the year's films.
A lot of the people who are powerful in Hollywood, a lot of the screenwriters and directors and executives grew up in the 70s. So now 25 years later, they're very interested in seeing these, this time period relived. The same thing happened, about a decade ago. We saw a revival of 50s and 60s movies. Now it just seems perfectly natural that we have 70s, and before you know it, there'll be an 80s nostalgia period in the movies too.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told
1997 was also a year which witnessed a revival of the horror genre by making it hip with Scream, which made more than $100 million at the box office. Scream 2 has just been released and imitations are in the pipeline. These films are catering to a teen generation steeped in pop culture and eager to embrace horror films that consciously poke fun at the genre.
The way I see it, someone's out to make a sequel, so it's our job to observe the rules of the sequel. Number one, the body count is always big.
The teen market had been ignored for a long time. I don't think there were a lot of movies being made for sort of the younger crowd. And I think Scream sort of appealed, one, to those people who loved scary movies and hadn't really seen one in a while, and to the young crowd that felt like, oh, finally, someone's made a movie for us.
Put up your arms and all you flippers.
Hollywood embraced aliens this year. They were everywhere, in Men in Black, in Alien Resurrection, and in Starship Troopers with its giant human-eating bugs. The special effects were impressive, but this was a year when Hollywood earned low marks for fresh ideas. More and more films resembled merchandising extravaganzas.
You take a movie like Batman and Robin. Now, what possible excuse did anybody have for making such a movie other than to keep the Batman franchise going? This time using Arnold Schwarzenegger, exploiting numerous product tie-ins. The movie doesn't really make any sense. It's not compelling. It's not even memorable. But that's what happens when your main impulse is not an aesthetic one, but a mammoth commercial one, and that alone.
For many Americans, a bright spot in the film year came from the handful of British films that were released over here. Whether it was Judi Dench and Billy Connolly in Mrs. Brown, or The Irrepressible Bean, there was a strong appetite for British film talent. In many ways, it was a year when America was reminded that British films could be both funny and have strong box office appeal. The biggest British hit was The Full Monty. It made more than $30 million in America alone and touched a raw nerve with audiences.
This is a group of guys that are basically body conscious. And anyone, especially people in America, can relate to that. And when a tale is told with sensitivity and a lot of humor, and just kind of an aw shucks, down home quality, people can really relate to it.
Iceberg, right ahead! The American year finished with Titanic, a film that represents both the best and worst of Hollywood. The best in terms of providing jaw-dropping special effects, the worst with its mindless mega-spending. It cost an estimated $250 million. Blockbusters in Hollywood now routinely have production and marketing budgets in excess of $100 million. There's a sense that spending is out of control.
I feel like it's an industry that's, walking towards a cliff and doesn't seem to be afraid of that cliff, and there's no wake-up call and nobody's all of a sudden saying, God, we need some sanity in this world. It just is not happening.
And the madness looks set to continue. Titanic doesn't appear to be the disaster many were predicting just a few months ago. Critics are voting it as one of the top 10 movies of the year. It's got Oscar momentum, which will no doubt only further propel the current wave of big-budget mega-spending into the future.
Well, summer came along and England failed to win the Ashes. Big surprise. But summer also brought its annual job lot of Hollywood blockbusters, and a wizened old crop it turned out to be. Jurassic Park, Lost World was fair, but marred by a soundtrack on which you could hardly hear the dialogue. Speed 2 was rubbish, but improved by a soundtrack on which you could hardly hear the dialogue. Batman and Robin was just dreadful. I could go on, and I will, but first, let's have a look at my sixth choice, Kolya, the enchanting Czech story of a middle-aged bachelor and a small Russian boy thrown together in Prague just before the Velvet Revolution. It won the Oscar for this year's Best Foreign Language Film.
Ruský soldáty.
Co to říká?
Co já vím, asi mu připomínají jugoslávský vojáky, víš, mají podobné uniformy. Nikam nechoď, Koljo, už to bude. Už to bude.
Красив пацан русский. Русский, а ты откуда? Воин. Ну-ка, круг. Шагом. Марш. Раз, два. Круг. Марш. Благодарю за службу, солдат.
Kdo ti dovolil? Kdo?
Lhal jsi mi. Je to Rus.
Lhal jsem ti, je to Rus, no.
Ty se s nima stýkáš, Fráňo?
No my všichni Rusové nejsou stejný, jeho rodiče.
Nejsme doma.
No nejsme doma, prosím tě, viděli, jak sem jdu.
Здравствуйте. Извините, пожалуйста, можно у вас руки помыть?
Jo, ruce umej.
Aha. Neteče voda.
Что?
Voda neteče.
А, вода не течет.
Potrubí prasklo někde.
Ну, извините, пожалуйста. До свидания. Ничего, нормально.
Nazdar.
Enchanting kid, that. Where was I? Oh yes, the summer blockbusters. Well, Men in Black with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith was an admirable exception to a feeble rule. Absolute Power with Clint Eastwood simply fell apart even as you watched. Con Air with Nicolas Cage was contemporary, violent and made little sense. Luc Besson's The Fifth Element with Bruce Willis was futuristic, violent and made little sense, while Turbulence made absolutely no sense at all, though Ray Liotta's performance was almost as gloriously bad as Jon Voight's in Anaconda. Want a reminder of Jon Voight in Anaconda? Here it is. And now compare him with Ray Liotta in Turbulence.
Why didn't you tell me the co-pilot was dead?
Oh, he died!
You knew he was dead.
No, I didn't, Terry. He was breathing when I put him into the bunk. Oh, shit. I did everything I could. This is bad. This is bad.
Pretty close, but sorry, Ray, the Lear has it. Elsewhere, we had a superb documentary in When We Were Kings, which told of Muhammad Ali's rumble in the jungle with George Foreman. And even better, there was The Full Monty with Robert Carlyle and Tom Wilkinson, who between them seem to have been in almost every British movie this year, leading a bunch of redundant Sheffield steelworkers in a bid to outstrip the Chippendales.
Favourite film's Singing in Rain. They do that walking at wall thing. Bloody ace it is, you should see it.
He blasted our bathroom a few months back. Get rid of him.
Shut up, you'll be fine.
He'll blow me cover.
Shut up. What walking up wall thing?
I'll show you. I'm Donald O'Connor, right? That's the wall. Oh, well, better than that in a film, like, you know.
So, you don't sing?
No.
You don't dance?
No.
Hope you don't think I'm being nosy, but, what do you do?
Well, there is this.
Gentlemen, the lunchbox has landed.
Chuffing, no. All right, Gerald. And see over there. Did his bathroom. Well, guy.
What can they have been looking at? The full Monty, which, as you will have noticed, was my 7th choice, was, of course, Britain's favourite film of the entire year. Almost mine too, but not quite. Now, though, for a seasonal break.
On the last day of Christmas, my multiplex gave to me 12 actually buttocks, 11 alien creatures, 10 nuclear warheads, 9 patient Oscars, 8 heads in a duffel bag, 7 years in Tibet, 6 hemispheres, 5 different elements, 4 US presidents, 3 failed kidnaps, 2 school reunions, and 1 heck of a lot of big bangs.
Ow! All good stuff. On the whole, this programme celebrates the best of the year's cinema, but what about the worst? Well, as usual, here is the list of 1997's top 10 turkeys, chosen by the entire Film 97 team. At 10, 8 heads in a duffel bag. Not enough heads. Why wasn't the scriptwriters in there as well? 9, excess baggage. Which title includes everything in the film except possibly Christopher Walken? 8, hard men. Hard to watch and hard to believe that anyone thought it was worth making. 7, Evening Star, a sequel to Terms of Endearment that would have been better named Terms of Endurance. Shirley MacLaine stars. Poor Shirley. 6, Father's Day, in which Robin Williams and Billy Crystal each tries to prove that he can be far less funny than the other. At 5, The Tango Lesson, strictly for those who love both the tango and the dreamily ever-present Sally Potter. 4, Turbulence, an airborne thriller, rather less riveting than being stuck in a holding pattern over Stansted. And 3, The Saint. Val Kilmer plays the Saint. We rest our case. 2, Speed 2, which might even have been number 1, if only you could hear what anyone was saying. And number 1, the turkey of the year, Batman and Robin, so awful that women in the audience even lost interest in George Clooney's codpiece. Well, nothing tastes worse than bad turkey, so let's briskly clear our palates with my 8th choice, Grosse Pointe Blank, a quirky, witty, inventive thriller starring John Cusack as a professional hitman.
Dad? What's going on? What is he doing here?
They're trying to kill me. My testimony. Martin saved my life.
I was sitting there alone on prom night in that goddamn rented tuxedo, and the whole night flashed before my eyes. And I realized finally, and for the first time, that I wanted to kill somebody. So I figured since I loved you so much, it'd be a good idea if I didn't see you anymore. They're right behind us. So I was in the Gulf last year. I was doing this thing. Anyway, I came up over this dune, and I saw the ocean. It was on fire. I mean, the whole thing, it was beautiful. And I just sat down, and I watched it burn. And I got the sneaking, dark suspicion that maybe there was meaning to life. You know, a point, like an organic connection between all living things. I don't know, God, a Yahweh, a higher power, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Don't move.
Debbie, I'm in love with you. And I know we can make this relationship work.
Now, I don't know whether you've noticed, but this year the movies have been suffering from a virulent epidemic of conjunctionitis. The opening credits of film after film have included starry names prefixed by the word "and." In Copland, we had "and" Robert De Niro, while "and" Glenn Close was in Air Force One. "And" Michael Caine popped up in Blood and Wine. Lost Highway featured "and" Richard Pryor. Contact proudly presented "and" Angela Bassett. And One Night Stand boasted "and" Robert Downey Jr. Add "and" Bob Hoskins in Michael, and Danny DeVito in LA Confidential, and Vanessa Redgraves in Smiller's Feeling for Snow, and well, there's no end to it. What narks me about the use of these ampersand actors is that usually, though admittedly not always, it's a right con. Their names in the credits lead you to expect a substantial performance, but too often all you get is a cough and a spit. Most galling of all was De Niro in Copland. Whenever he was on screen, he was the best thing in the film. But you could grow old wondering whether you'd ever see him again. What it all means is that these days we sit in the cinema afraid to drop our popcorn in case we miss the only appearance of the biggest name in the picture. I think movies should carry a warning like Robert De Niro will appear 3 times for a total of 1 minute and 39 seconds. At least that way we'd know what to expect. So what else was there? Well, whether you like Rowan Atkinson in Bean rather depends on how much you like Rowan Atkinson as Bean, but it was well directed by Mel Smith. Air Force One with Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman was not a bad thriller, and Mike Leigh's Career Girls was very good indeed. So was Wild, which had excellent performances by Stephen Fry and Jude Law. Face starred Robert Carlyle, again, and A Life Less Ordinary starred Cameron Diaz, again, along with Ewan McGregor. In G.I. Jane, that well-known skinhead Demi Moore licked the US Navy SEALs into feminist shape. Hercules was a hip, sharp piece of Disney animation, and among foreign films, Chen Geiger's Temptress Moon and 2 French offerings, L'Appartement and Ma Vie en Rose, were enjoyable enough, though not as much as I'd hoped. On the other hand, my 9th choice, Mrs. Brown, with Judi Dench as Queen Victoria and Billy Connolly as her Scottish gillie John Brown, was an unexpected delight.
Your Majesty, thank goodness you're safe. I'll have a bath prepared immediately. I recommend McDonald's African embrocation.
Ah, pipe down, man. The woman's fine.
We stayed a little longer than expected with Mr. and Mrs. Grant. It was most agreeable.
We were expecting you to return by 6.
And now I'm back.
And we had a wee nip of whiskey.
To keep out the cold.
Aye.
Thank you, John.
She's drunk. Distinct flushing around the cheeks. She was drunk, I tell you. No, she wasn't. Surely not. Don't even think it.
As the year drew to an end, John Travolta and Nicolas Cage swapped identities violently and ludicrously in Face Off, and in Copland, Sylvester Stallone tried to persuade us that, honest, cross his heart, he'd really been a serious actor all the time. Sigourney Weaver returned as Lieutenant Ripley in Alien Resurrection, and Pierce Brosnan as James Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies. Mike Figgis's One Night Stand was very good, and Regeneration was excellent. But what about Brad Pitt? Having played an attractive IRA killer in The Devil's Own, He popped up again as an attractive Nazi in 7 Years in Tibet. I don't know where he's coming from politically, but he must be a very strong candidate for leadership of the impenetrably naive party. And oh yes, the Spice Girls made a movie, and oh no, it's not among my 10 best, the last of which is LA Confidential, a superlative thriller starring Kevin Spacey, Kim Basinger and Danny DeVito, and set in 1950s Hollywood.
You'll go to the gas chamber, so for God's sake, admit what you did.
I didn't mean to hurt her. Maybe she's okay.
Okay. Well, these people are all in the morgue. They were dead when you left them.
I just wanted to lose my cherry. She don't die, so I don't die. She don't die, so I don't die.
Lewis, who's the girl? What's her name? Who are you talking about? Was she at the Night Owl? Lewis, listen to me. Was she at the Night Owl?
She don't die.
This newspaper shit ain't shit. Where's the girl Fontaine's talking about? Did you kill her? You wanted Lewis to lose his cherry, but that wasn't enough. So things got out of hand, and you made her bleed. She bled on your clothes, so you burned the clothes.
Told you that.
Now listen to me. If that girl is still alive, she's the only chance you've got.
I think she's alive.
You think? Then where is she now? Did you leave her someplace? Just sell her out? Tell me where she is. Move! White? 1 and 6. Where's the girl? White, I have this under control. Put the weapon down. Here's the girl!
What? Sylvester Fitch. 109 Avalon. Brown Corner House. Upstairs.
So 1997 exits stage left, leaving the British film industry in better shape than it's been for some time, so long as it doesn't screw things up over the next few years. A happy note on which to end, although, hang on, there was something else, wasn't there? Oh yes, I said I might name the film I enjoyed most in 1997. Well, okay, it being Christmas time and all, I will. It was LA Confidential, the best crime movie since Pulp Fiction, and in its way, every bit as good. And with that, and with every movie buff in the land asking, is Titanic really worth $250 million? And can England possibly win the World Cup? Because Scotland won't. May I wish you all a very happy new year, and remind you that I'll be back with Film 98 on January the 5th. One last thing, don't make the tea just yet. Watch the final credits instead, because they're really rather good. Until next year, goodbye.
Sexy thing, you. I believe in miracles. Since you came along, you sexy thing. Oh, kiss me, you sexy thing. Touch me, baby, you sexy thing. I love the way you touch me, darling. You sexy thing. Oh, sexy to see, you sexy thing. Sexy thing, you. I believe in miracles. Since you came along, you sexy thing. Oh, touch me, kiss me, darling. I love the way you hold me, baby. It's ecstasy.
First on BBC One, the Carry On team are back. Hold on to your sporrans, there's a chilly wind blowing up the Khyber.